You know that feeling. When you're trying but nothing's moving. When every effort feels pointless, like you're pushing against a wall that won't budge. When you look at your life and think, why? Why am I still here in this same place, doing the same things, feeling the same way? If that's where you are tonight, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. Being stuck, it's not a moral failure, it's not laziness, it's not proof that something's fundamentally wrong with you. It's something else. Something Carl Jung understood deeply. Something he spent years helping people navigate. And tonight, as you rest here in this darkness, we're going to explore what it actually means to be stuck. Not so you can fix it, not so you can force yourself to move, but so you can understand it, and in that understanding, maybe find a way through. Because here's what Jung discovered through decades of sitting with people who felt exactly like you do. Being stuck, it's not random, it's not meaningless. It's your psyche trying to tell you something, trying to show you something that you haven't been willing to see. And until you see it, until you really see it, you'll stay stuck. Not because you're not trying hard enough, but because you're trying to move in a direction your psyche knows isn't right for you. Let me say that again. You're trying to move in a direction that some part of you, the deepest part, knows isn't right. And so the psyche, it creates resistance. It creates stuckness, not to punish you, but to protect you from going somewhere that would take you further from yourself. That's what being stuck is. A message from you to you, saying stop, look, listen, something here needs your attention. But we don't hear it that way, do we? We hear it as failure, as incompetence, as proof that we're not good enough, not strong enough, not disciplined enough. We beat ourselves up, we try harder, we force, we push, we shame ourselves, we compare ourselves to others who seem to be moving forward effortlessly. And we stay stuck, because the harder we try to force movement, the more the psyche digs in. It's like, it's like trying to move through quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. But if you stop, if you just hold still for a moment and breathe, you might discover there's solid ground right beneath you. You just couldn't feel it because you were thrashing. That's what tonight is about. Stopping the thrashing, holding still, and feeling what's actually here, what's actually happening. Because once you understand what being stuck really is, once you see it clearly, it changes. Not because you forced it to change, but because understanding itself is movement. Consciousness, Jung would say, is the beginning of transformation. So, let's start there. Let's start with, what does it actually feel like to be stuck? Because I think if you're here tonight, you know this feeling in your bones. It feels like you wake up and it's the same day again. The same thoughts, the same routines, the same problems, the same dissatisfaction. And you tell yourself, today will be different. Today I'll make a change today. I'll start that thing, quit that thing, be different. But then, the day unfolds, CT like yesterday. And by the time you go to bed, you're right back where you started. Maybe you tried, maybe you really did, but somehow nothing moved. The conversation you were going to have, you didn't have it. The decision you were going to make, you didn't make it. The boundary you were going to set, you let it slide again. And you lie there thinking, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just do it? Everyone else seems to be able to move forward, to make changes, to grow. Why am I stuck? And that question, it haunts you, because you don't have an answer, not a real one. You have theories, excuses, self-judgments. You tell yourself, I'm lazy, I'm scared, I'm weak, I don't want it badly enough. But none of those feel true, do they? Because you're not lazy, you're exhausted from trying. You're not weak, you're holding more than most people could carry. You're not lacking desire, you're aching for change. So what is it? What's keeping you stuck? Jung would say it's not what's keeping you stuck, it's what being stuck is keeping you from your mind. That's the real question. Not, why can't I move forward? But, what would moving forward require me to face that I'm not ready to face? What would I have to let go of to move? What would I have to admit to myself that I've been avoiding? What truth would I have to see that I've been refusing to look at? Because being stuck, it's almost always about avoidance. Not conscious avoidance, not, I know what I'm avoiding and I'm choosing this. Unconscious avoidance. Your ego, the conscious part of you, it wants to move, it's desperate to move, but you're unconscious, it's holding you back because it knows that movement requires something you're not yet willing to give. Maybe it requires admitting your relationship is over. Maybe it requires leaving a job that's killing your soul even though it pays well. Maybe it requires setting a boundary with someone you love, knowing they might not forgive you. Maybe it requires pursuing something you actually want, instead of what you think you should want. Maybe it requires grieving something you've been pretending didn't matter. Maybe it requires accepting that you can't save them, can't fix them, can't make them love you the way you need. Whatever it is, your unconscious knows. And it's keeping you stuck as a form of protection. Because moving forward without first acknowledging what needs to be acknowledged, that would be dangerous. That would take you further from yourself, not closer. So, the psyche, it creates symptoms. Procrastination, indecision, paralysis, exhaustion, confusion, numbness. All of these, they're not the problem. They're the solution to a problem you haven't named yet. Does that make sense? Your stuckness is trying to help you. It's saying, slow down, stop, look around. There's something here you need to see before you can move. But we don't hear it that way. We hear it as failure. And so we fight it, we shame it, we try to override it with willpower, with discipline, with force. And it fights back. Because the psyche, it's stronger than the ego. Always. The ego, the conscious part of you. It thinks it's in control. It thinks if I just try harder, if I just force myself, I can make this happen. But the unconscious, it's vast, it's deep, it's powerful. And when the ego tries to force something the unconscious isn't ready for, the unconscious wins. Every time. Not through confrontation, but through sabotage. You'll forget, you'll get distracted, you'll get sick, you'll have an emergency, you'll find 1,000 reasons why today isn't the day. And you'll think I'm just unlucky, or I'm disorganized, or I don't have enough time. But Jung would say no. Your unconscious is communicating through symptoms, through resistance, through being stuck. And until you listen, until you turn toward it instead of fighting it, you'll stay stuck. Because the psyche, it will hold you there as long as it takes until you see what you need to see. Now, I know this might sound frustrating. You're stuck, and I'm telling you, your psyche wants you to be stuck. That's not very comforting, is it? But here's the thing. Once you understand this, once you stop fighting the stuckness and start listening to it, everything changes. Because suddenly you're not the victim of some random paralysis. You're in conversation with yourself. Your unconscious is trying to tell you something, and instead of shouting over it, trying to drown it out with willpower and discipline, you can listen. You can ask, okay, what are you trying to show me? What am I avoiding? What am I not ready to face? What truth am I running from? And when you ask that question sincerely, not trying to manipulate an answer, but genuinely wanting to know, the unconscious, it will answer. Not always in words, not always clearly, but it will answer through dreams, through symptoms, through feelings that arise when you hold still long enough to feel them. It will show you what you've been avoiding. And that's the beginning of getting unstuck. Not through force, but through awareness. Not through trying harder, but through understanding what you've been trying so hard to avoid. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone, let's say they're stuck in a job they hate. Every day they wake up and tell themselves, I need to start looking for something new. I need to update my resume. I need to reach out to that contact. But they don't. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and they're stuck. They beat themselves up about it. They think, I'm such a coward, I'm so lazy, what's wrong with me? But here's what Jung might see. This person, they're not stuck because they're lazy. They're stuck because moving forward would require admitting something they're not ready to admit. Maybe that they've wasted years in the wrong career. Maybe that they don't actually know what they want, and that's terrifying. Maybe that leaving would disappoint their parents who are so proud of their successful child. Maybe that they're afraid they won't be good at anything else, and at least here they know how to survive. Whatever it is, the stuckness is protecting them from having to face that truth. And until they're willing to face it, to sit with it, to grieve it, to accept it, they'll stay stuck. Because the psyche knows that moving before you're ready, before you've acknowledged what needs to be acknowledged, that's not real movement. That's just running in a different direction. And the psyche, it doesn't want you to run. It wants you to stop, turn around, and face what you've been running from. Because that's where your life is, not in the future you're trying to force yourself into, but in the present, in the truth you've been avoiding. So when you feel stuck, when nothing you do makes a difference, the question isn't how do I get unstuck? The question is, what is my stuckness trying to show me? What truth am I avoiding? What would moving forward require me to admit, to face, to let go of, to grieve? And can I be willing to look at that? Not to fix it, not to solve it, not to make it go away, but just to see it, to acknowledge it. To say, yes, this is true, this is what I've been avoiding, because the moment you see it, really see it without judgment, without trying to change it, something shifts. The stuckness, it loosens. Not because you forced it, but because you honored it. You listened to what it was trying to tell you. And the psyche, when it's been heard, when it's been seen, it can relax. It doesn't need to hold you there anymore. It can let you move, not toward some forced future, but toward yourself, toward truth, toward authenticity, toward wholeness. That's what being stuck is really about. It's not about laziness or weakness or lack of discipline. It's about the psyche protecting you from moving in the wrong direction, from living a life that isn't yours, from becoming someone you're not. And yes, it's uncomfortable, it's frustrating, it's painful. But it's also, if you're willing to listen, it's also the kindest thing your psyche can do, or you. It's saying, stop, you're going the wrong way. Turn around, come back to yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what you needed to hear. Not that you need to try harder, not that you need more discipline, not that you're failing, but that you need to stop. You need to listen. You need to see what you've been refusing to see. Because once you see it, once you really see it, the path forward, it becomes clear. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped forcing and allowed what's true to emerge. Let's sit with that for a moment. Just breathe. You don't have to figure anything out right now. You don't have to know what you're avoiding or what truth you need to face. You just have to be willing to stop fighting the stuckness and start listening to it. That's all. Just a willingness to listen. To consider that maybe being stuck isn't the problem. Maybe it's the solution to a problem you haven't fully understood yet. And maybe, just maybe, when you understand the problem, really understand it, the solution, it won't require force or willpower or discipline. It will just happen, naturally. Because you'll finally be moving in the right direction. Not the direction you thought you should go, but the direction your psyche has been trying to guide you toward all along. Toward yourself, toward truth, toward wholeness. That's where we're going tonight. Not trying to get you unstuck through force, but helping you understand what being stuck is really about, so you can stop fighting yourself and start finally moving in a direction that's actually yours. Now let me tell you something about Jung's own life. Because he understood being stuck, not just theoretically but personally. There was a period after his break with Freud when Jung himself was completely stuck. He called it his confrontation with the unconscious, and for years he was paralyzed. He couldn't work, he couldn't write, he couldn't function in the way he had before. Everything felt meaningless, and he was terrified. He thought he was going mad. But what he discovered through that period of being stuck, of being unable to move forward in the old way, was that he was being reorganized. His psyche was dismantling the old structures, the old beliefs, the old identity, so that something new, something truer could emerge. And he couldn't force it. He couldn't make it happen faster. He just had to be with it, endure it, listen to it. And slowly over time, a new understanding emerged. A new way of seeing the psyche, a new approach to psychology, a new sense of himself. But it required being stuck first. It required a period of paralysis where the old way forward was no longer available, because if he'd been able to keep moving in the old direction, he would have missed what the psyche was trying to show him. He would have stayed Freud's disciple, never becoming himself. The stuckness, as painful as it was necessary. It was the psyche's way of saying, you can't go that way anymore, you have to find a new way, a way that's yours. And that's true for all of us. When we're stuck, really stuck, not just procrastinating but deeply paralyzed, it's often because the old way forward isn't available anymore. Because we've outgrown it, or because it was never really ours to begin with. And the psyche, it's trying to show us that we need a new direction. But we can't see the new direction while we're still trying to force the old one. We have to stop. We have to be still. We have to be willing to not know for a while. To be in the darkness, in the confusion, in the not having an answer, until slowly a new way emerges, not from force but from listening, not from the ego deciding but from the self-revealing. That's what being stuck is often preparing us for. Not just getting unstuck, but discovering a completely new way of being in the world. A way that's more true, more authentic, more ours. But we can't get there if we're constantly trying to force movement. We have to surrender to the stuckness. We have to trust that it has something to teach us, and we have to be willing to not know for as long as it takes, until what needs to emerge emerges. I know that's hard. I know you want answers, you want solutions, you want to know how long will this last, when will I feel normal again? And I can't tell you that, but what I can tell you is that being stuck doesn't last forever. It lasts as long as it needs to last to show you what you need to see. And the more you fight it, the longer it lasts, but the more you listen to it, the more you honor it, the more you're willing to see what it's trying to show you, the shorter it becomes. Not because you forced your way through it, but because you finally heard the message. And once the message is heard, once it's truly received, the psyche, it can let you move again. Because now you're moving towards something real, not away from something painful, towards something real, toward yourself. That's the difference. And that's what we're going to explore over the next few hours as you rest here. What being stuck really is, what it's trying to tell you, and how paradoxically, the way through it isn't trying harder to move, but learning to be still and listen, so you can finally move in a direction that's actually yours. Rest now, breathe, let your body soften. You don't have to figure anything out. You don't have to fix anything. You just have to be here, with the stuckness, with the not knowing, with the frustration, all of it. And as you rest, as you breathe, your unconscious, it's listening. It hears that you're willing to consider that maybe being stuck isn't the enemy. Maybe it's the teacher. And that willingness, that openness, that's the beginning of everything changing. Not through force, but through understanding. Rest. Just rest. We have time, all the time you need, to understand what being stuck is really about, and to find your way not out of it, but through it. To the other side, where you're not just moving again, but moving toward yourself. Finally, after all this time, rest. So let's go deeper now into why you're stuck. Because understanding the why, that's where the power is. That's where things start to shift. Not because you're doing anything, but because understanding itself is movement. Consciousness, Jung said, is the first step in any transformation. Just seeing clearly what's actually happening that changes every 12 thing. So why are you stuck? We talked about it a little in the last section, but let's really look at it now. Really examine it. Because the answer, it's not what you think. It's not I'm not disciplined enough, or I'm lazy, or I don't want it badly enough. Those are surface explanations, ego explanations. The real answer, it's deeper. It's in the unconscious, and it usually has to do with three things: ego resistance, shadow blocking, and fear of what comes next. Let's start with ego resistance. The ego, that's the part of you that thinks it's in control, that has plans, that knows what it wants or thinks it knows. The ego says, I want to leave this job, I want to end this relationship, I want to move to a new city, I want to start that business. Whatever it is, the ego has decided, this is what I want, this is what I'm going to do. But then nothing happens. You try, you make plans, you take steps, but somehow it all falls apart, or you sabotage it, or circumstances intervene. And you can't understand why. Because the ego, it really does want that thing. But here's what Jung understood. The ego, it's only a small part of the psyche. Underneath the ego, there's the unconscious, vast, deep, powerful. And the unconscious, it has its own agenda. Not a conscious agenda. Not something it's deliberately doing, but an agenda nonetheless. The unconscious, it's oriented toward wholeness, toward the self, toward becoming who you actually are. And sometimes what the ego wants is in conflict with what the unconscious knows you need. The ego wants security. The unconscious knows you need growth. The ego wants comfort. The unconscious knows you need challenge. The ego wants to stay safe. The unconscious knows you need to take risks. And when there's that conflict between what the ego wants and what the unconscious knows you need, the unconscious wins, always. Not through confrontation, but through resistance. Through making it impossible for the ego's plan to work. You forget things, you get sick, you have emergencies, you lose motivation, you feel exhausted. Or you do everything right, but somehow it still doesn't work out. The job offer falls through. The relationship ends before you can leave. The opportunity disappears. And the ego, it gets frustrated, it doesn't understand. But the unconscious, it's saying, no, not that way, not yet, there's something else you need to see first. That's ego resistance. The ego trying to force something, the unconscious resisting because it knows that path isn't right, not yet, maybe not ever. And you feel that resistance as being stuck, as paralysis, as inability to move forward. But it's not inability, it's refusal. Your unconscious is refusing to let you go down a path that would take you away from yourself. Even if that path looks good on paper, looks like what you should want, if it's not what you actually need, not what serves your wholeness, the unconscious will block it. And you'll stay stuck until you're willing to consider that maybe, just maybe, what you think you want isn't what you actually need. Does that resonate? Can you feel that in your own stuckness? That sense of, I'm trying to move forward, but something deeper is holding me back. Something I can't quite name, can't quite see, but it's there, blocking the way. That's the unconscious saying, look again, look deeper, this isn't it. Now, the second reason you might be stuck is shadow blocking. This is related to ego resistance, but it's slightly different. The shadow in Jung's work is all the parts of yourself you've rejected, denied, refused to acknowledge. The anger you're not allowed to feel, the desires you're ashamed of, the needs you think are selfish, the parts of you that don't fit the acceptable image you've created. All of that gets pushed into the shadow, and the shadow, it has power, enormous power. Because what you reject doesn't go away, it just goes underground, and from underground it controls you, without you even knowing it. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone who's stuck in a people-pleasing pattern. They can't say no, they can't set boundaries, they can't disappoint anyone, and they're stuck, exhausted, burned out, but unable to change. They try. They tell themselves, next time I'll say no, next time I'll set a boundary. But when the moment comes, they can't. They fold, they give in, they say yes when they mean no. Why? Because in their shadow there's anger and selfishness, and the part of them that wants to say, no, this is mine, you can't have it. But they've rejected that part since childhood maybe. They learn nice people don't get angry, nice people aren't selfish, nice people always put others first. So the angry part, the selfish part, the part that wants to protect their own needs, that got pushed into the shadow, and now it's blocking them from setting boundaries. Because to say, don't to boundary, you have to access that part. You have to be willing to be a little selfish, a little angry, a little unwilling to please. But they can't, because they've rejected that part so completely, it's not available to them. It's in the shadow, split off, denied. And so they're stuck, unable to change no matter how hard they try. Because what they need to make the change is the very thing they've spent their life rejecting. That's shadow blocking. The parts of you need to move forward are the parts you've exiled into the shadow. And until you're willing to reclaim them, to integrate them, to say, yes, this is also me, you'll stay stuck. Because you can't move forward without all of yourself. You can't become whole by keeping parts of yourself in exile. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Meaning you don't grow by only accepting the good parts, the acceptable parts. You grow by bringing the shadow into the light. By acknowledging, yes, I am angry. Yes, I do have selfish desires. Yes, I do want things that don't fit the image I've created. All of that is me. And when you can do that, when you can integrate the shadow, suddenly movement becomes possible. Because now you have access to all of yourself. Not just the acceptable parts, but all of it. The anger that gives you the strength to set boundaries. The selfishness that protects your own needs. The desire that moves you toward what you actually want. All of it available, integrated, whole. And that's when you get unstuck. Not because you tried harder, but because you became more whole. So if you're stuck, one of the questions to ask yourself is, what part of me would I need to move forward that I've been rejecting or denying or refusing to acknowledge? What shadow quality do I need to make this change? And am I willing to claim it, to say, this is also me? Because that's often where the stuckness breaks. When you're willing to be more than you've allowed yourself to be. When you're willing to include what you've excluded. When you're willing to be whole instead of perfect. Now, the third reason you might be stuck is fear of what comes next. This one is subtle because it's not conscious. You don't wake up and think, I'm afraid of what comes next, so I'm going to stay stuck. It happens beneath awareness, but it's real, and it's powerful. Here's how it works. Being stuck, as uncomfortable as it is also familiar. You know this place. You know how to survive here. You know what to expect. It's painful, yes, but it's a known pain. But moving forward into something new that's unknown. And the unknown is terrifying. Even if what's on the other side might be better. Even if you rationally know that change would be good for you. The unconscious, it doesn't care about rational. It cares about survival. And to the unconscious, the unknown is dangerous. So it keeps you stuck in the known pain rather than risk the unknown. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone who's been in an unhappy marriage for years. They know they should leave. They've thought about it, talked about it, maybe even planned it. But they can't. They're stuck. Why? Because as bad a promise, the marriage is its familiar. They know who they are in this marriage. They know how to navigate it, how to survive it. But leaving that's stepping into the unknown. Who will they be without this relationship? Will they be alone forever? Will they be able to support themselves? Will they regret it? All of those questions the unconscious hears as danger. Danger, stay where you are. And so they stay stuck. Not because they want to, but because the fear of the unknown is stronger than the pain of the known. That's what Jung meant when he talked about the resistance to individuation. Becoming yourself, becoming whole, requires stepping into the unknown, requires letting go of who you've been to become who you are. And that's terrifying, because you don't know who you'll be on the other side. You don't know if people will still love you, if you'll still fit, if you'll be okay. And so the psyche, to protect you from that terror, keeps you stuck. In the familiar, in the known, in who you've always been. Even if who you've always been isn't who you actually are. Even if staying stuck is slowly killing you. Because at least it's familiar. At least you know how to survive it. The unknown, that's the real danger, according to the unconscious. So if you're stuck, one of the questions to ask is, what am I afraid will happen if I move forward? What unknown am I avoiding by staying here? Not what do I think will happen, because you probably have rational answers for that. But what do I fear deep down beneath the rational thoughts? What's the terror that's keeping me frozen? For some people, it's fear of being alone. For some, it's fear of failure, of trying and not succeeding. For some, it's fear of success, of having what they want and then losing it. For some, it's fear of being seen, of being visible, of taking up space. For some, it's fear of disappointing others, of not being who they need you to be. For some, it's fear of their own power, of what they might become if they stopped holding themselves back. Whatever it is, there's usually a fear underneath the stuckness. A fear that feels bigger than you, more powerful than your desire to move forward. And until you're willing to face that fear, to name it, to look at it, you'll stay stuck. Because the psyche, it will protect you from that fear by keeping you immobile. But here's the thing. The fear, it's usually a lie. Not that it's not real, it feels very real. But what it's telling you about what will happen if you move forward, that's usually not true. It's usually a story from your past, from childhood maybe, or from some earlier wound. A story that says if you do this, you'll be abandoned or rejected or hurt or destroyed. And that story, it feels true, but it's not necessarily true now. It was true maybe at some point in some context, but it's not necessarily true anymore. And yet the unconscious, it's still operating from that old story, still trying to protect you from a danger that's no longer real. That's what Jung meant when he talked about complexes, old emotional patterns from the past that are still running in the present, still controlling your behavior, still keeping you stuck based on old fears, old wounds, old stories that are no longer relevant. But until you make them conscious, until you see them clearly, they control you from the shadows. So part of getting unstuck is bringing those old fears into the light, looking at them, examining them, asking, is this still true? Is this fear based on my current reality, or is it based on an old story, an old wound? And if it's an old story, can I gently question it? Can I consider that maybe, just maybe, moving forward won't lead to the disaster my unconscious is predicting? Maybe it will lead to something real, something true, something mine. Maybe the unknown isn't as dangerous as staying stuck. Maybe the fear is worse than the reality. And maybe, just maybe, I can take one small step into the unknown and see what happens. Not committing to the whole journey, not forcing myself into something huge. Just one small step, and then another, and another, until slowly I discover the unknown isn't what I thought it was, and I'm stronger than I thought I was, and being stuck wasn't protecting me at all. It was just keeping me small, keeping me safe, yes, but also keeping me from myself, from the life that's been waiting for me all along. Now, here's something important to understand. All three of these reasons for being stuck, ego resistance, shadow blocking, fear of the unknown, they're not mistakes. They're not proof that something's wrong with you. They're the psyche doing its job, protecting you in the only way it knows how. The problem is the psyche. It's operating from old programming, old patterns, old fears. It's trying to keep you safe based on what was dangerous in the past. But what was dangerous then might not be dangerous now. And what the psyche thinks is protection might actually be imprisonment. So getting unstuck, it's not about fighting the psyche. It's not about overriding it or forcing it or shaming it. It's about updating it, bringing consciousness to the unconscious patterns, so the psyche can see, oh, that old danger, it's not here anymore. I don't need to hold them back, to protect them from something that's no longer a threat. I can let them move. That's what Jung's work was all about, making the unconscious conscious, not to eliminate it, not to control it, but to integrate it, to work with it, to bring it into relationship with consciousness, so that instead of being controlled by unconscious patterns, you can choose consciously, with awareness, with understanding. You can choose to move forward even though it's scary. You can choose to reclaim your shadow even though it's uncomfortable. You can choose to listen to the unconscious when it says not that way, and find a different way, a way that honors both the ego's desires and the unconscious wisdom. That's individuation. That's the process of becoming whole. And being stuck, it's often a necessary part of that process, because it forces you to stop, to look, to see what you've been avoiding, what you've been rejecting, what you've been afraid of, and to bring it into consciousness so you can finally move forward, not from unconscious patterns, but from conscious choice. Not from fear, but from understanding. Not from force, but from integration. Let me tell you something else, Abu. Don't Jung's experience during his confrontation with the unconscious, the period when he was stuck, unable to work, unable to function, he didn't just endure it passively. He engaged with it. He started what he called active imagination, which is a way of dialoguing with the unconscious. He would, in a meditative state, imagine figures, symbols, scenarios, and he would interact with them, ask them questions, listen to their answers. Not analyzing them, not interpreting them, just being with them. Letting them speak, letting them show him what he needed to see. And through that process, he discovered that what felt like madness was actually communication. The unconscious was trying to show him something. Something about himself, something about the psyche, something about what it means to be human. But he couldn't see it until he stopped trying to control it, until he stopped trying to force his way through it and just listened. And that's what got him unstuck. Not trying harder, not forcing, not overriding the resistance, but listening, engaging, dialoguing, being willing to see what the unconscious was trying to show him. And you can do the same thing. Not in the formal way Jung did. You don't need to be a psychoanalyst. But you can, when you're stuck, when nothing seems to work, you can stop and ask, what is this stuckness trying to tell me? What am I avoiding? What part of myself have I rejected that I need to reclaim? What am I afraid will happen if I move forward? And then you can listen, not with your conscious mind, not trying to figure it out or analyze it, but with receptivity, with openness. Just being willing to hear whatever emerges, through feelings, through images, through memories, through dreams. However it comes, you listen and you honor it and you bring it into consciousness. And that's how you get unstuck. Not by force, but by awareness. Not by trying harder, but by understanding deeper. Not by overriding the resistance, but by hearing what the resistance is trying to protect you from. And then gently, with compassion, with understanding, you can say to that part of yourself, thank you for trying to keep me safe. I see why you're holding me back. I understand the old fear, the old wound, the old story, but I'm okay now. I can handle this. I can take this risk. I can reclaim this part of myself. I can step into the unknown, and I'll be okay. Not because I'm certain, not because I know what will happen, but because I'm willing to find out. I'm willing to move even though I'm afraid. I'm willing to be myself, even though it's uncomfortable. I'm willing to let go of who I've been to become who I am. And when you can do that, when you can speak to the unconscious with that kind of understanding, that kind of compassion, something shifts. The resistance, it softens. Not because you forced it, but because you honored it. You saw it, you understood it, you thanked it for trying to protect you. And then gently you said, I'm ready now. I'm ready to move. Not against you, but with you. Not forcing, but allowing. Not overriding, but integrating. Together. All of me. Moving forward. Finally. That's what tonight is about. Not giving you a list of steps or a formula or a quick fix, but helping you understand what being stuck really is, so you can stop fighting yourself and start working with yourself, listening to yourself, honoring all of yourself, even the parts that are holding you back, because they're not the enemy, they're you, trying their best to keep you safe. And they deserve your understanding, your compassion, your gratitude, and then your willingness to move forward anyway. Together, whole, rest now. Let that sink in. You don't have to do anything with it right now. Just let it be there in your awareness. The understanding that maybe being stuck isn't about lack of discipline or willpower or desire. Maybe it's about old fears, old patterns, old protections that are still running, and maybe the way through isn't force, but understanding, compassion, integration. Rest with that. Breathe. Let your body release a little more. You're doing good work just by being here, just by listening. The unconscious, it's hearing you. It knows you're willing to see, willing to understand, willing to change. And that willingness, that openness, that's everything. That's the beginning of getting unstuck. Now, let's talk about something that might shift how you see this whole experience of being stuck. What Jung understood that most people don't is that stagnation, paralysis, being stuck. It's not meaningless. It's not just a problem to solve or a weakness to overcome. It has meaning, purpose, intelligence. And when you can see that, when you can understand what the stuckness is really about, everything changes. Not because you forced it to change, but because you stopped fighting it and started listening to it. So let me tell you what Jung saw when he looked at stagnation. He saw that the psyche is always moving toward wholeness, always. Even when it looks like nothing's happening, even when it feels like you're completely stuck, the psyche, it's working. Beneath the surface, beneath your awareness, it's reorganizing, integrating, preparing for something new to emerge. But that process, it requires stillness. It requires a pause, a stopping, a period of not moving, because you can't become something new while you're still racing forward in the old direction. You have to stop first. You have to be still long enough for the old structures to dissolve, for the old identity to loosen, for the old ways of being to release their grip, and that feels like being stuck. But it's not stuckness in the sense of nothing's happening. It's stuckness in the sense of everything's happening, but internally, invisibly. Jung called this the transcendent function, the psyche's natural ability to hold opposites, to integrate contradictions, to move from one state of being to another. But it's not a linear process. It's not step 1, step 2, step 3. It's circular, or maybe spiral. You have to go down before you can go up. You have to dissolve before you can reform. You have to be stuck before you can move forward in a new way. And most people, they don't understand this. They think movement is always good, stagnation is always bad. But Jung understood that's not true. Sometimes stagnation is necessary. Sometimes being stuck is exactly what you need, not forever. But for now, for this moment, for this period of your life, you need to stop. You need to be still. You need to not know, not move, not have answers. Because something is trying to emerge. Something new, something true, something more aligned with who you actually are. But it can't emerge if you're still racing forward in the old pattern. It needs space, stillness, darkness. To grow, like a seed underground, you can't see it growing. It looks like nothing's happening. But beneath the surface, roots are forming, structures are developing, life is organizing itself. And if you dig it up to check on it, to make sure it's growing, to force it to show itself, you kill it. You have to trust that in the darkness, in the not seeing, in the not knowing, something is happening. Something essential. Something that will change everything. But only if you let it unfold in its own time. That's what Jung meant when he talked about the wisdom of the psyche. The psyche, it knows what it's doing. Even when the ego doesn't. Even when you're frustrated, confused, desperate for things to change. The psyche, it's working at its own pace, in its own way. And your job is not to force it, not to rush it, not to override it. Your job is to trust it, to be with it, to honor it, to give it the space and time it needs, to do what it's trying to do. Now I know that's hard. Because we live in a culture that worships productivity, movement, progress, achievement. A culture that says, if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. If you're not constantly improving, constantly growing, constantly doing more, you're failing. And so, when you're stuck, when nothing's moving, you feel ashamed, inadequate, like you're wasting time. Like everyone else is moving forward and you're just here, stuck, unable to catch up. But what if? What if that's not true? What if being stuck isn't falling behind? What if it's exactly where you need to be right now? What if the culture's obsession with constant movement, constant productivity, is actually the problem? And your stuckness, your inability to keep up that pace, is your psyche saying, no, stop, this isn't sustainable, this isn't real, this isn't you. slow down, be still. There's something here you need to see, you need to feel, you need to understand, before you can move forward in a way that's actually yours. Jung saw this in his own life and in the lives of his patients. He saw that the people who were most stuck, who were most paralyzed, were often on the verge of the biggest transformation. They were in what he called the night sea journey, a period of darkness, confusion, disorientation, where everything you thought you knew, everything you thought you were, everything you thought you wanted, starts to dissolve. And you're left in the dark, not knowing who you are or where you're going, and that's terrifying. But it's also, Jung would say, necessary. Because you can't become who you're meant to be while you're still clinging to who you've been. You have to let go first. You have to be willing to not know for a while. To be in the darkness, in the confusion, in the stuckness, until slowly something new begins to emerge. Not the old you trying harder, but a new you that you don't have planned or forced or figured out. A you that emerges from the depths, from the unconscious, from the darkness. When you're finally willing to stop and listen, that's what your stuckness might be. Not a problem, but a threshold. Not a failure, but a transition. Not falling behind, but going deeper. Into yourself, into truth, into what's real. So that when you do move forward, when you finally do get unstuck, you're moving towards something that's actually yours. Not toward what you think you should want or what everyone else wants, but toward your own life, your own path, your own truth. Let me give you an example from Jung's work. He had a patient, a successful businessman in his 40s, who came to Jung because he was stuck, completely paralyzed, unable to make decisions, unable to move forward in his career. Everything he'd been good at, everything that had brought him success, suddenly didn't work anymore, and he was terrified. He thought he was losing his mind, losing his abilities. But Jung saw something different. He saw that this man had lived the first half of his life according to external standards. He'd pursued success, money, status, all the things he thought he was supposed to want, and he'd achieved them. But now in his 40s, something in him was saying, is this it? Is this all there is? There was a hunger for something deeper, something more meaningful, something more real. But he didn't know what that was. He couldn't name it, couldn't see it. All he knew was that the old way forward wasn't available anymore. He was stuck, and Jung said, "You're not losing your mind, we're not failing. You're in transition." The first half of your life was about building, achieving, establishing yourself in the world, and you did that successfully. But now, the second half of your life, that's about something different. It's about finding meaning, finding depth, finding who you actually are beneath all the roles and achievements. And that requires letting go of who you've been, which is why you're stuck, because you can't move forward in the old way anymore. But you don't yet know what the new way is. So you're in between. In the threshold, in the darkness, in the unknown. And that's where you need to be right now. Not forever, but for now. You need to be here, in the not knowing, in the confusion, in the stuckness, until the new way reveals itself. And you can't force it, you can't rush it, you can't make it happen. You can only be with it, trust it, allow it to unfold in its own time. And this patient, he didn't like that answer. He wanted Jung to fix him, to give him a technique, a strategy, a way to get unstuck quickly. But Jung said, no, you don't need to be fixed. You need to be with this. You need to stop fighting it and start listening to it. What is this stuckness trying to tell you? What old way of being are you being asked to release? What new way is trying to emerge? And over time, through their work together, this patient began to see that the stuckness wasn't the problem. The problem was his resistance to the stuckness, his insistence that he should be able to force his way through, that he should already know the answer. But when he stopped resisting, when he allowed himself to be in the not knowing, to be in the darkness, in the transition, in the threshold, something began to shift. Not all at once, not in a dramatic moment, but slowly, quietly. New interests emerged, new values, new directions, things he'd never considered before, things that didn't fit the old image of success, but things that felt real, true, meaningful. And gradually, over months, he began to move forward, but in a completely different direction. Not toward more success, not toward what he thought he should do, but toward what felt alive, what felt true, what felt like him. And looking back, he could see that the period of being stuck, as painful as it was the most important time of his life, because it forced him to stop, to question, to look deeper, and to find something real beneath the surface. That's what Jung understood about stagnation. It's not meaningless. It's not just a problem to solve. It's often a necessary transition between one way of being and another, between who you've been and who you're becoming. And it requires patience, trust, willingness to not know, for as long as it takes, until what needs to emerge emerges. Now, here's something important. Not all stuckness is meaningful transition. Sometimes you're stuck because you're avoiding something you know you need to do. You're procrastinating or self-sabotaging or running from something clear. And that's different from the kind of stuckness we're talking about. The difference is meaningful stuckness. It feels like you're trying everything and nothing works. You're genuinely confused, genuinely don't know what right move is. And there's a sense beneath the frustration of something trying to emerge, something you can't quite see yet. But avoidant stuckness, it feels like you know what you need to do, but you're not doing it. You're making excuses, finding distractions, waiting for the perfect moment. And there's a sense of bad faith, of lying to yourself. You know you're avoiding. And that's different. That's not the psyche protecting you or guiding you. That's just fear or resistance or unwillingness to face something uncomfortable. And that kind of stuckness, it doesn't require patience or trust or waiting for something to emerge. It requires action, honesty, courage. To do the thing you already know you need to do. So part of understanding your stuckness is discerning which kind is it. Is it meaningful transition, where I genuinely don't know the way forward and something is trying to emerge? Or is it avoidance, where I know what I need to do but I'm not doing it? And you know deep down, you know the difference. Meaningful transition feels like confusion, not knowing genuine paralysis. Avoidance feels like guilt, shame, knowing you're lying to yourself. Different feelings, different situations, different responses. For meaningful transition, you need patience, trust, willingness to be in the not knowing. For avoidance, you need courage, honesty, action, even when it's scary. So check in with yourself. Which kind of stuck are you? And be honest. Because if you're avoiding and you try to be patient with it, you'll just stay stuck in a different way. And if you're in meaningful transition and you try to force action, you'll exhaust yourself trying to move in a direction that's not yet clear. Different situations require different responses. So be honest with yourself about what's actually happening. Now, let's say you've checked in and you're pretty sure this is meaningful stuckness. You're genuinely confused, genuinely don't know the way forward, and something feels like it's trying to emerge but you can't see it yet. What do you do? How do you be with that? How do you trust that without just giving up or becoming passive? Because there's a difference between trusting the process and being passive. Trusting the process means you're actively engaged with the not knowing. You're paying attention to dreams, to feelings, to what arises when you hold still. You're asking questions, journaling, reflecting, sitting in silence. You're doing your inner work even if the outer situation isn't changing yet. But being passive means you're just waiting, hoping, distracting yourself. Not really engaged, not really paying attention, just enduring. And that's different. Jung's approach during his own period of being stuck was very active. He was doing active imagination, writing in his journals, painting, building things with his hands. He was deeply engaged with his inner experience, even though the outer world looked like he was doing nothing. He wasn't waiting for something to happen to him. He was participating in the process of his own transformation. By paying attention, by being present, by engaging with what was emerging from the unconscious, and you can do the same. You can be stuck externally, but very active internally. Paying attention to your dreams, what symbols appear, what feelings arise. Journaling, what thoughts come up, what patterns do you notice? Sitting in silence, what emerges when you stop distracting yourself? Creating something, painting, writing, making music, not for anyone else, just as a way of expressing what's inside. Walking in nature, moving your body, getting out of your head, into your senses. All of these are ways of being actively engaged with the process of transformation. Even when externally it looks like nothing's happening, that's the difference between trusting the process and being passive. One is active, engaged, present, participating. The other is avoiding, waiting, hoping someone else will save you. So, if you're stuck in meaningful transition, don't just wait. Don't just endure, engage. With your inner experience, with what's trying to emerge, with the darkness and confusion. Be present to it, be curious about it, be willing to not understand it, but still be with it. That's the work. And it is work, even if it doesn't look like progress to anyone else. It's the most important work you can do. Because you're participating in your own becoming, in your own individuation, in the process of becoming who you actually are. Not who you've been, not who you thought you should be, but who you are at the deepest level. And that emerges not from force, not from willpower, but from trust, from patience, from willingness to be in the unknown, for as long as it takes. Let's take a moment to just breathe with that. To let that sink in. You're not stuck because we're failing. You're stuck because something new is trying to emerge. And it can't emerge if you're still racing forward in the old direction. It needs stillness, space, darkness. To grow, like a seed underground, and your job is not to dig it up, not to force it, not to make it happen. Your job is to trust it, to water the ground, to tend the soil, to create conditions for growth, and then to wait, patiently, actively, presently, until what's ready to emerge emerges. In its own time, in its own way, not according to your timeline, not according to your plan, but according to the wisdom of the psyche, which knows what you need better than your ego does. Rest with that. Breathe. Feel your body here in this moment. You don't have to figure anything out right now. You don't have to know what's emerging or when you'll get unstuck. You just have to be willing, to be here in the not knowing, to trust that something is happening even when you can't see it, to engage with your inner experience even when the outer world looks stuck. That's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. And as you rest, as you breathe your unconscious, it's working. Dissolving old structures, integrating new understanding, preparing the ground. For what's next? You don't have to manage it, you don't have to control it. You just have to allow it, trust it, be with it, and it will unfold in its own perfect timing. Rest now, deeper, into trust, into patience, into the understanding that being stuck isn't the end of your story. It's often the middle, the threshold, the transition, the space between who you were and who you're becoming. And that space, as uncomfortable as it is sacred, is necessary, is exactly where you need to be. Right now. Rest. Now, let's look at something that might be difficult, but it's important. The shadow of being stuck. What I mean by that is, sometimes being stuck, as much as you hate it, as much as you want to get unstuck, there's something you're getting from it. Some benefit, some protection, some way it's serving you that you're not consciously aware of. And I know that might sound harsh or accusatory, like I'm saying you're choosing to be stuck or you want to be stuck. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the unconscious, it's very clever, and sometimes it keeps you stuck, because at some level being stuck is protecting you from something you're not ready to face, something you don't want to see or feel or deal with. And until you're willing to look at that, to acknowledge it, you'll stay stuck. Not because you're choosing it consciously, but because unconsciously being stuck is serving a purpose. Let me give you some examples so this makes sense. Imagine someone who's stuck in a job they hate. They complain about it constantly, they talk about leaving, they dream about doing something else, but they never actually leave. Years go by and they're still there. Why? On the surface they might say, I can't afford to leave, I have bills, responsibilities, I need the security, and that might be true on one level. But if you look deeper, if you look at the shadow, you might find that being stuck in that job is protecting them from having to face their own potential, from having to try something new and risk failing, from having to discover that maybe they're not as talented or capable as they've always believed. As long as they're stuck, they can tell themselves, I could do something amazing if only I had the chance. But they never have to test that belief, never have to risk being disappointed in themselves. The stuckness, it protects the fantasy of who they could be, by making sure they never have to actually try. Does that make sense? It's not conscious. They're not sitting there thinking, I'm going to stay stuck to protect my ego. But unconsciously, the psyche knows moving forward would require facing something they're not ready to face. And so it keeps them stuck. For their own protection. Or imagine someone else who's stuck in an unhappy relationship. They know it's not working. They've known for years, but they can't leave. They keep hoping it will get better, keep giving it one more chance, keep waiting for the right moment. But the right moment never comes. Why? Again, on the surface, they might say, I still love them, or I don't want to hurt them, or what about the kids? And those things might be true, might be part of it. But if you look at the shadow, you might find that being stuck in this relationship is protecting them from having to be alone, from having to face the terror of being by themselves, of having to figure out who they are without this other person, from having to risk being vulnerable with someone new and potentially being hurt again. The stuckness, it keeps them safe from those fears, even though it's also keeping them from having a real relationship, from being truly happy. They're trading aliveness for safety, and unconsciously the psyche has decided safety is more important, so it keeps them stuck. These are just examples. Your situation might be completely different, but the principle is the same. Sometimes being stuck is serving a purpose, protecting you from something you're not ready to face. And until you're willing to look at that, to ask yourself honestly, what am I getting from being stuck? What would I have to face if I got unstuck? What fear, what truth, what part of myself am I avoiding by staying here? Until you're willing to look at that, you'll stay stuck, because the unconscious, it will keep protecting you from whatever it thinks you can't handle, even if that protection is also a prison. Now, this is tricky because when you first hear this, you might resist it. You might think, no, I'm not getting anything from being stuck. I hate being stuck. I want to move forward. And that's true. Consciously, you do want to move forward. But the unconscious, it has its own agenda. And it's worth at least considering, at least asking yourself, is there some part of me that's afraid of what comes next? Some part of me that's benefiting from staying stuck? Some way that being stuck is protecting me from something I don't want to face? Just be willing to consider it. You don't have to have an answer right away. Just hold the question. What would I have to face if I got unstuck? What fear? What truth? What part of myself would I have to confront? And am I willing to do that? Because here's what Jung understood. Until you're willing to face what you're avoiding, the psyche will keep you stuck to protect you from it. It's not punishment, it's protection. But it's also limitation. It's keeping you safe, but it's also keeping you small. Keeping you from your life, from your potential, from who you could become. And at some point you have to ask yourself, is the safety worth it? Is avoiding this fear, this truth, this part of myself, worth staying stuck, worth staying small, worth never knowing what I could become? Or am I willing to face it, to look at it, to feel it, to acknowledge it, so I can finally move forward? Not just away from being stuck, but toward something real. Toward myself. That's the shadow work that often needs to happen when you're stuck. Looking at what you're avoiding by staying here, and deciding consciously whether you're willing to face it. Let me tell you about another one of Jung's patients. A woman in her 50s who came to him because she was stuck. She'd been wanting to leave her marriage for decades. But she couldn't. She was completely paralyzed. Every time she got close to making a decision, something would happen and she'd back away. An illness, a family crisis, a financial problem, always something, and she was convinced that circumstances were keeping her stuck. That if only things would settle down, if only the timing was right, she could leave. But Jung, he listened, and he heard something else. He heard the terror underneath all the excuses, the terror of being alone, of starting over, of not knowing who she was without this relationship. She'd been someone's wife for 30 years. That was her identity, her role, her sense of self. And leaving would mean losing that identity. Becoming nobody, no role, no clear sense of who she was. And that was more terrifying than staying in an unhappy marriage. So her unconscious kept creating obstacles, kept making it impossible to leave, because it knew she wasn't ready to face that terror, the terror of the unknown, the terror of being no one. And when Jung helped her see that, when he helped her acknowledge that she was keeping herself stuck, not because circumstances prevented her, but because she was terrified of what came next. Something shifted. Not immediately, not all at once, but slowly she began to consider, what if I could be someone other than his wife? What if I could discover who I am on my own? What if the unknown isn't as terrifying as I think? And eventually, after years of work, she did leave. Not because circumstances finally aligned, but because she finally faced the fear that had been keeping her stuck. She looked at it, acknowledged it, felt it fully, and then she moved forward despite it. Not because the fear went away, but because she decided the fear was worth facing. To have her own life. That's the shadow work of being stuck. Looking at what you're really afraid of, what you're really avoiding, and deciding whether staying stuck is worth it, or whether you're willing to face the fear, to step into the unknown, to risk finding out who you are on the other side. Now, let me be clear, this isn't about blaming yourself or judging yourself for being stuck or for having fears or for unconsciously protecting yourself. That's not what this is about. The unconscious does what it does to keep you safe. And there's nothing wrong with that, nothing to be ashamed of. The question is, now that you're aware of it, Now that you can see it, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay safe and stay stuck, or do you want to risk and move forward? There's no right answer. There's just your answer. What's true for you in this moment, in this situation? But you can't make that choice consciously until you see what you've been doing unconsciously, until you see what the stuckness has been protecting you from. So that's the work right now as you lie here. To gently, with compassion, ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I get unstuck? What would I have to face? What would I have to feel? What would I have to become that I'm not ready for? And just listen. Don't judge the answer. Don't try to fix it. Just listen. What comes up? Maybe it's fear of failure. Maybe it's fear of success, of having what you want and losing it. Maybe it's fear of being alone, of being rejected, of being seen. Maybe it's fear of disappointing others, of losing their approval, of being different. Maybe it's fear of your own power, of what you might become if you stopped holding yourself back. Maybe it's something else entirely, something you can't name, but you can feel it. Whatever it is, just acknowledge it. Yes, this is what I'm afraid of. This is what I'm avoiding. This is what's keeping me stuck. And that acknowledgement, just that, is powerful. Because once you see it, once you name it, it loses some of its power over you. It's no longer unconscious, invisible, controlling you from the shadows. It's conscious, visible, something you can look at and decide about. You can say, yes, I'm afraid of that, and I understand why. And I can choose to stay here where it's safe. Or I can choose to move forward even though I'm afraid, not because the fear is gone, but because I've decided my life, my growth, my potential is worth more than safety, is worth facing the fear. That's consciousness, that's choice, that's freedom. Not freedom from fear, but freedom to choose in the presence of fear. To choose your life even when it's scary, to choose yourself even when it's uncomfortable, to choose truth even when it's difficult. That's what Jung meant by individuation. Becoming conscious of what's been unconscious. So you can choose who you want to be instead of being controlled by old patterns, old fears, old protections that are no longer serving you. Now here's something else important. Sometimes the shadow of being stuck isn't just fear. Sometimes it's secondary gain, meaning you're getting something from being stuck. Something beyond just safety from fear. Let me explain. Imagine someone who's stuck, who can't seem to move forward in any area of their life. And because they're stuck, people feel sorry for them, take care of them, don't expect much from them. They get sympathy, attention, lowered expectations. And at some level, unconsciously, that feels good. It feels safe to be the one who can't, who's struggling, who needs help. Because then you don't have to be responsible, don't have to be capable, don't have to carry your own weight. You can be the victim, the one who's stuck, and everyone else has to accommodate that. That's secondary gain. Getting something from the problem that makes it hard to let go of the problem. Or imagine someone else who's stuck creatively, can't finish anything, can't put their work out there. And because they can't, they get to maintain the fantasy that they could be great if only they finished. They get to avoid the risk of putting something out there and having it be judged, criticized, rejected. They get to stay potential, never actual. And there's something comfortable about that. Something safe about never having to find out whether you're as good as you think you are. That's also secondary gain. Getting something from being stuck that makes you unconsciously want to stay stuck. Now, I'm not saying this is your situation. I'm just saying it's worth considering. Am I getting something from being stuck? Sympathy. Attention, lowered expectations, protection from judgment, maintenance of fantasy. Something that I'd lose if I got unstuck. And if I am, if there is some secondary gain. That's not bad. It doesn't make you manipulative or weak. It just means your psyche has found a way to get needs met through the symptom. And if you want to get unstuck, you need to find a different way to meet those needs. A healthier way, a more direct way, instead of meeting them through being stuck. For instance, if you're getting sympathy and attention from being stuck, maybe you need to ask, what do I actually need that I'm trying to get through sympathy? Do I need connection validation, to be seen? And can I find ways to get those needs met that don't require me to stay stuck? Can I ask for what I need directly? Can I build relationships where I'm valued for who I am, not for my struggles? Can I learn to see myself so I don't need others to see me all the time? Those are the real questions. Not how do I stop getting sympathy, but what need is the sympathy meeting, and how can I meet that need in a healthier way, so I don't need to stay stuck to get my needs met? Does that make sense? It's not about shaming yourself for having needs or for meeting them in imperfect ways. It's about becoming conscious of what you're doing so you can find better ways that allow you to move forward and still get your needs met. That's the work. And it takes time and self-compassion and patience. But it's worth it, because on the other side, you get to be unstuck and whole. Not stuck and getting crumbs of what you need, but moving and actually meeting your real needs in real ways. Now let's sit with all of this for a moment, because we've covered a lot. The shadow of being stuck, the ways being stuck might be protecting you from fears you're not ready to face. The ways being stuck might be giving you some secondary gain that you'd lose if you moved forward. And I know this might feel heavy or confronting. You might be thinking, great, so I'm keeping myself stuck and it's my own fault. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the psyche is incredibly intelligent, and it does what it does for good reasons. To protect you, to keep you safe, to get your needs met in whatever way it can. There's no shame in that. The question is, now that you're aware of it, now that you can see it, do you want to keep doing it this way? Or do you want to find a different way? A way that doesn't require you to stay stuck. A way that lets you move forward and still be safe, and still get your needs met. That's the choice you get to make now. Not unconsciously, but consciously. With awareness, with understanding, with compassion for yourself, you can say, yes, I see what I've been doing, I see why I've been doing it, and I understand. I was trying to protect myself. I was trying to meet my needs. And I'm grateful for that protection, for that care. But I don't need to do it this way anymore. I can face the fear. I can meet my needs in healthier ways. And I can move forward without losing my safety, without losing what I need. I can have both. Movement and safety. Growth and security. Freedom and protection. Not by staying stuck, but by becoming conscious and making different choices. That's the power of shadow work. It's not about eliminating the shadow or condemning yourself for having one. It's about bringing it into consciousness so it stops controlling you. And you can choose freely, consciously, how you want to live, who you want to be, what you want to do with this one life you have. Take a breath. Let that settle. You don't have to have all the answers right now. You don't have to know exactly what you're afraid of or what you're getting from being stuck. You just have to be willing to look, to ask the questions, to sit with the discomfort of not knowing, and to trust that when you're ready, the answers will come. Not from me, not from outside, but from within. From the unconscious becoming conscious, from the shadow coming into the light. And when that happens, when you finally see what's been keeping you stuck, everything changes. Not because you forced it, but because you understood it. And understanding, real understanding, is transformation. Rest now. Breathe. Let your body soften. The work you're doing just by being here, just by listening, just by being willing to look at the shadow, it's profound work. It's the work that changes everything. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually, you'll look back and you'll see. This was the moment when things began to shift, when you stopped fighting yourself and started understanding yourself. When you stopped trying to force your way through and started listening to what you needed. That's the moment everything changes, and you're in that moment now. Right now, rest with it, trust it, let it unfold. In its own perfect time, you're exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do, and something new is already beginning to emerge. You might not see it yet, but it's there, growing in the darkness, in the stillness, in the space you've created by being willing to stop and look and understand. Rest, just rest. The transformation is happening, even now, as you breathe, as you listen, as you allow. Everything is changing. Now, let's talk about something that might sound paradoxical, but it's essential to understand. The psyche has a natural movement toward wholeness. Always, it's always try. Jung to heal, to integrate, to become more complete. But here's the paradox. The more you try to force that movement, the more you resist it. The more you try to make healing happen, the more you block it. Because the ego, when it tries to control the process, when it tries to make transformation happen on its own timeline, it actually gets in the way of the natural movement that's already happening. Does that make sense? It's like trying to force a flower to bloom by pulling its petals open. You can't do it. You'll just damage the flower. The flower blooms in its own time, according to its own nature. And your job is not to make it bloom, but to create conditions where blooming can happen. Water, sunlight, good soil, patience. And then trust that the flower knows what it's doing. The psyche is the same way. It knows how to heal. It knows how to integrate it. Knows how to move toward wholeness. But it needs the right conditions. Consciousness, presence, patience, willingness to not know. And it needs the ego to get out of the way. To stop trying to control, to stop trying to force, to stop trying to make it happen, and just allow it to unfold. In its own way, in its own time. That's what Jung meant when he talked about trusting the unconscious. Not trusting that it will give you what you want when you want it, but trusting that it knows what you need better than you do, and that if you create the conditions and get out of the way, it will move you toward wholeness. Not according to your plan, not according to your timeline, but according to its own wisdom, which is deeper and wiser and more aligned with your true nature than anything your ego could plan. Now, I know that's hard to accept because we live in a culture that says you can make anything happen if you just try hard enough. If you just have enough willpower, enough discipline, enough determination, you can overcome anything. You can force your way through. You can make it work. And sometimes that's true for certain things, but for the deep work, the soul work, the transformation work, that approach doesn't work. In fact, it makes things worse. Because the more you try to force transformation, the more the unconscious resists. The more you try to control the process, the more you stay stuck. Because the unconscious, it won't be controlled, it won't be forced. It has its own pace, its own way, its own timing. And if you try to override that with willpower or discipline or force, it will just dig in and refuse to move. Until you're willing to let go, to surrender, to allow what needs to happen in its own way. So if you're stuck and you've been really trying to force your way through, maybe that's the problem. Maybe the trying itself is what's keeping you stuck. Maybe what you need is not more effort but less, not more force but more allowing, not more doing but more being, with what is, with where you are, with what's trying to emerge. Let me tell you about something Jung wrote about the relationship between the ego and the self. The ego, that's the conscious part of you, the part that thinks, plans, decides, tries to control. The self, that's the deeper part, the whole psyche, conscious and unconscious together, are the totality of who you are. And Jung said the ego, it's not in charge. It thinks it is, it acts like it is, but it's not. The self is in charge. The self is moving you toward wholeness, toward integration, toward becoming who you actually are. And the ego's job is not to control that process, but to cooperate with it, to listen, to pay attention, to follow where the self is leading. Not to force, but to allow. Not to dominate, but to serve. The ego in service of the self, that's the right relationship. But most of us, we have it backwards. We think the ego is in charge. We think we can force our lives into whatever shape we want. And we try and we push and we exhaust ourselves. And we stay stuck because the self, it won't be overridden. It won't let you go in a direction that's not yours. It won't let you force yourself into a life that doesn't fit. It will keep you stuck until you're willing to listen, to let go of control and trust where it's trying to take you. That's what being stuck is often about. The ego trying to force something that the self knows isn't right, and the self creating resistance until the ego gives up and surrenders and allows what's actually true to emerge. So if you're stuck, one of the most important questions you can ask is, what am I trying to force? What direction am I trying to move that might not be the right direction? What life am I trying to create that might not be my life? And am I willing to let go of that and listen to where the self is actually trying to take me, which might be a completely different direction from what I thought I wanted? It's surrender, not giving up but letting go of control, not being passive but being receptive, not forcing but allowing. And that's when movement becomes possible, when you finally stop trying to make it happen and allow it to happen in its own way. Now, here's another thing Jung understood. The psyche, it moves in cycles, not in straight lines. There are periods of expansion and periods of contraction, periods of movement and periods of stillness, periods of light and periods of darkness, and all of them are necessary. You can't be in expansion all the time. You can't be moving forward constantly. You need periods of rest, of integration, of consolidation, where you stop and catch your breath and let everything you've learned sink in before you can move forward again. And being stuck often is one of those periods. A period of contraction, of stillness, of rest, after a period of expansion, of movement, of growth. The psyche saying, okay, we've moved enough for now. Now we need to stop and integrate and consolidate before we can move again. But we don't recognize it as a natural cycle. We think something's wrong. I should be moving. Why am I stuck? And we fight it, and we try to force movement, when what we actually need is rest, is time to let everything settle, to let the growth you've already done become solid. Before you grow more, think about nature, think about seasons. There's spring when everything grows, expands, reaches toward the light. And then summer when that growth continues, matures, becomes full. And then fall when things start to die back, to release, to let go. And then winter when everything stops, everything's dormant, everything's still. And that's necessary. That stillness, that death, that darkness. Because without it, there can't be spring again. Without the death of fall, without the rest of winter, there's no new growth in spring. The cycle requires all of it. Not just the growth, but the death, the rest, the stillness. And human life is the same. We go through cycles of growth and rest, of expansion and contraction, of movement and stillness. And they're all necessary. You can't skip the winter and go straight to spring. You need the winter to rest, to restore, to prepare for the next growth. And being stuck, it often feels like winter. Cold, dark, nothing growing, nothing moving. And you hate it, you want it to be spring, you want to be growing again. But maybe you're not stuck, maybe you're just in winter. And winter has its own purpose, its own value, its own necessity. It's not failure, it's not stagnation, it's not wasted time, it's necessary rest before the next growth. And the more you fight it, the more you try to force spring, the longer winter lasts. But if you can accept it, if you can surrender to it, if you can say, okay, this is winter, I'm in the dark, I'm resting, then when the time is right, spring will come, not because you forced it, but because you allowed the natural cycle to complete. Does that resonate? Can you feel that maybe your stuckness isn't permanent, isn't pathological? It's just a phase, a season, a necessary period of rest before the next movement. And your job is not to force spring, but to be in winter fully, to rest, to restore, to be still, and trust that spring will come when it's ready. When you've rested enough, when you've integrated enough, when you're ready for the next growth. Let me tell you about a time in my own life when I felt completely stuck. I'd been working, trying to move forward in my career, making plans, taking action, doing everything right. And nothing was working. Every door I knocked on closed, every opportunity I pursued fell through, every plan I made collapsed. And I was so frustrated, I thought, what's wrong with me? Why can't I make this happen? I tried harder, I pushed more, I forced, I struggled, and I just got more stuck. Until finally, I was so exhausted I couldn't try anymore. I just gave up. Not in a defeated way, but in a surrendered way. I said, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. I don't know what's supposed to happen. I give up trying to force it. I'm just going to be still and see what happens. And you know what? That's when things started to move. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly, quietly. A new direction started to emerge that I hadn't considered before. New interests, new opportunities, new ways of thinking. That didn't fit my old plan, my old vision, my old idea of what I wanted. But that felt more real, more true, more mine. And I realized I'd been stuck because I was trying to force myself in a direction that wasn't actually mine. The self, my deeper psyche, it knew that path wasn't right for me. And it kept me stuck until I was willing to let go of that path and listen to where it was actually trying to take me, which was somewhere completely different, somewhere better, somewhere more aligned with who I actually am. But I couldn't see it while I was still trying to force the old path. I had to surrender, I had to let go, I had to be willing to not know before the new path could reveal itself. And that's what I want you to understand. If you're stuck, if you've been trying and nothing's working, maybe, just maybe, you're trying to force something that's not yours, and the psyche, it's keeping you stuck to protect you from going down the wrong path. And what you need is not more force, more effort, more trying. What you need is surrender. Letting go of control, letting go of your plan, letting go of what you think you want, and being willing to not know, to be in the dark, to wait, until what's actually true, what's actually yours, reveals itself, in its own time, in its own way. And I know that's scary, because surrender feels like giving up, feels like failure, feels like nothing will ever change. But it's not. Surrender is active, it's conscious, it's a choice. It's saying, I can't force this. I don't know how to make this happen, but I trust that something knows. Something deeper than my ego, something wiser than my conscious mind. the self, the psyche, the life force within me, whatever you want to call it. I trust that it knows what I need better than I do, and I'm willing to let go and follow where it leads. That's surrender. And that's when, paradoxically, movement becomes possible. When you stop trying to move and allow yourself to be moved by something deeper, something truer, something more aligned with your actual Natu, Ray. That's the secret that Jung understood. You can't force individuation, you can't force wholeness, you can't force transformation. You can only create conditions for it, and then get out of the way, and trust that it will happen in its own time. Now, what are those conditions? What creates the space for natural movement for the psyche's own healing to occur? First, consciousness awareness, paying attention to your dreams, your feelings, your body, your intuitions, what arises when you're still. The unconscious is always communicating, always trying to show you what you need to see. But you have to pay attention, you have to listen, you have to be present. Not analyzing, not interpreting, not trying to figure it out. Just noticing, being with, allowing it to speak. Second, acceptance of what is. Not what you wish it was, not what it should be, but what it actually is. You're stuck, okay? You're stuck. Can you be with that without fighting it, without shaming yourself, without trying to fix it immediately? Can you just be here in the stuckness and see what it has to teach you? Third, patience, trust in the process. Understanding that transformation takes time, that the psyche moves at its own pace, and your job is not to rush it, but to honor its timing. Even when it feels too slow, even when you're frustrated, even when you want answers now, can you trust that there's a wisdom in the slowness, in the waiting, in the not knowing? Fourth, compassion for yourself, for where you are, for what you're going through. Not judgment, not criticism, not harshness, but kindness, understanding, the same compassion you'd owe effort to anyone else who was struggling. Can you give that to yourself? And fifth, space-time silence. Time away from the constant, doing the constant noise, the constant distraction. Time to just be, to feel, to listen to what's inside, without filling every moment with activity or entertainment or numbing, just being with yourself in the stillness. Those are the conditions: consciousness, acceptance, patience, compassion, space. And when you create those conditions, when you offer that to yourself, the psyche, it responds. It begins to move in its own way, at its own pace, not according to your plan, but according to its own wisdom, toward healing, toward integration, toward wholeness. And you don't have to make it happen, you just have to allow it, to be present for it, to honor it, to trust it, and it will unfold. As you rest here tonight, those conditions are present. You're conscious, you're paying attention, you're listening, you're accepting where you are, what you're feeling, the stuckness itself. You're being patient, giving yourself time, not rushing, not forcing. You're offering yourself compassion, kindness, understanding, and you're creating space this time, this silence, this stillness. All the conditions are here. And so the psyche, it's responding. It's moving beneath the surface in ways you can't see yet, dissolving old patterns, integrating new understanding, preparing new directions. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to make it happen. You just have to be here and allow it to do what it knows how to do, what it's been trying to do all along. If you just get out of the way and let it, breathe with that, feel it in your body, the sense that something is moving even though you can't see it, the trust that you don't have to force this, you just have to allow it, the understanding that being stuck isn't the end, it's just a phase, a necessary pause before the next movement. Let that sink in. Let yourself soften into that trust, into that allowing, into the understanding that you're not doing this alone. The psyche is with you, guiding you, moving you toward wholeness. And your job is just to trust it, to follow where it leads, even when you can't see where it's going, even when it doesn't make sense to your ego, even when it's taking longer than you want it to. Trust it, because it knows what you need better than you do. And it will get you there, not to where you thought you wanted to go, but to where you actually need to be, to who you actually are, beneath all the plans, all the shoulds, all the trying. The real you, that's been waiting all along, for you to stop forcing and start allowing, start trusting, start following the natural movement of your own psyche toward wholeness, toward truth, toward yourself. Rest now, deeper, into that trust, into that allowing, into the understanding that you're right where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do. Even if it looks like nothing's happening, even if you're still stuck, something is happening beneath the surface, in the darkness, in the stillness. Your psyche is working, moving you toward wholeness. And all you have to do is trust it, allow it, be with it, and it will unfold in its own perfect time, in its own perfect way. Rest, trust, allow. That's all. That's everything. So here we are, at the end of this journey through what it means to be stuck. And I hope by now you're starting to see that being stuck isn't what you thought it was. It's not failure, it's not weakness, it's not proof that something's wrong with you. It's communication from your psyche to you, asking you to stop, to look, to see something you've been missing. And the way through it, the way to get unstuck, it's not through force, not through trying harder, not through willpower or discipline. It's through understanding, through acceptance, through surrender, through finally listening to what the stuckness has been trying to tell you all along. That's the paradox, isn't it? You get unstuck by accepting that you're stuck. You move forward by stopping the fight to move forward. You find your way by admitting you're lost. That's what Jung understood that most people don't. The resistance, the fight, the trying to force, that's what keeps you stuck. But the acceptance, the surrender, the willingness to be with what is, that's what allows movement to happen naturally when you finally stop blocking it. So, if you take nothing else from tonight, take this. Being stuck is not your enemy. It's your teacher, and the lesson it's trying to teach you is specific to you, to your life, to what you need to see. For some of you, the lesson is you're trying to force a path that isn't yours. For some of you, it's you're avoiding something you need to face. For some of you, it's you need to reclaim a part of yourself you've rejected. For some of you, it's you need to rest. You've been moving too fast for too long. For some of you, it's you need to grieve something you lost that you never let yourself mourn. For some of you, it's you need to let go of who you've been so you can become who you are. Whatever it is for you, the stuckness knows, your psyche knows, and it's been trying to show you through the paralysis, through the resistance, through the inability to move, saying, stop, look here, this is what you need to see. And now tonight you've listened. Maybe you don't have all the answers yet. Maybe you're still not sure what the stuckness is about, but you've listened. You've been willing to consider that maybe it's not just a problem to solve. Maybe it's something deeper, something meaningful, something that deserves your attention. And that willingness, that openness, that's everything. That's the beginning of getting unstuck, not through force, but through awareness. Not through trying harder, but through understanding deeper. Not through fighting yourself, but through being with yourself. With compassion, with patience, with trust that you're exactly where you need to be, even if where you are is stuck. Now let me tell you what happens next. After tonight, after this listening, after this understanding, things will start to shift. Not all at once, not dramatically, not in the way you expect, but shift they will. Because once you've seen something, once you've made something conscious, you can't unsee it. It changes you, and that change ripples out into your life, into your choices, into how you move through the God world. You might find yourself making a decision you couldn't make before. You might find yourself saying no when you used to say yes. You might find yourself pursuing something new that wasn't on your radar. You might find yourself letting go of something you've been clinging to. You might find yourself feeling less stuck, even though externally nothing's changed yet. Because internally, everything's changed. You've stopped fighting yourself. You've started listening to yourself. You've begun to trust that your psyche knows what it's doing. And that trust that changes everything. It doesn't mean the fear goes away, or the uncertainty disappears, or you suddenly know exactly what to do. But it means you're no longer paralyzed by the not knowing. You can move even in uncertainty, even in fear, even without all the answers, because you trust that you're being guided by something deeper than your conscious mind, by the self, by the psyche's natural movement toward wholeness. And that trust allows you to take steps you couldn't take before. Small steps, tentative steps maybe, but steps nonetheless. And each step reveals the next step. Not the whole path, just the next step. And that's enough. You don't need to see the whole path. You just need to see the next step. And trust that when you take it, the step after that will reveal itself. That's how you move forward when you've been stuck. Not by having a complete plan, not by knowing exactly where you're going, but by taking one step into the unknown. And then another and another. Trusting that you're being led towards something real, cementy, true, something yours. Even if you can't see it yet. Let me tell you about one more thing before you drift off completely. Jung had this idea that he called the transcendent function, which is the psyche's ability to hold opposites, to integrate contradictions, and to create from that tension between opposites something new, something that transcends both. For instance, the tension between being stuck and wanting to move forward. If you only identify with one side, if you only say, I want to move forward, I hate being stuck, you create resistance, fight exhaustion. But if you can hold both, if you can say, yes, I want to move forward, and yes, I'm stuck right now. Both are true, both can exist at the same time. Then something new can emerge. Not just moving forward, not just staying stuck, but a third thing, a new understanding, a new direction, a new way of being. That couldn't have emerged if you'd only held one side. That's the transcendent function. And it requires the ability to hold paradox, to live in the tension, to not collapse into one side or the other. To say, I'm stuck, and I trust the process. I don't know where I'm going, and I'm willing to take the next step. I'm afraid, and I'm moving forward anyway. I'm in the dark, and I trust there's light ahead. Those paradoxes, those tensions. They're not problems to solve. They're the creative space where transformation happens, where something new can emerge. That's beyond what the ego could have planned. So as you move forward from tonight, as you live with this new understanding, practice holding paradox. Practice saying both are true. I'm stuck and I'm learning. I don't know and I trust. I'm afraid and I'm brave. I'm here and I'm becoming. All of it true at the same time. And in that space between the opposites, something new will emerge. Something you couldn't have imagined. Something that's more true, more whole, more you, than anything you could have forced or planned or figured out. That's the gift of being stuck. Not just getting unstuck, but becoming someone new. Someone who can hold paradox, who can trust process, who can move in uncertainty. Someone who's more whole, more integrated, more themselves than they were before. And that's worth every moment of being stuck, every moment of frustration, of confusion, of not knowing. Because on the other side, you're not just unstuck, you're transformed. Now, before you drift into deeper sleep, I want to say something. If this meditation has helped you tonight, if something here resonated, if you feel less alone in your stuckness or more understanding of what it means, I'd love to hear from you. In the comments below, you can share whatever feels right. Just a word, a thought, what this brought up for you, how you're feeling. You don't have to explain everything. You don't have to have it figured out. Just if you want to, you can share. And know that by sharing, you're helping someone else who's also stuck, who's also confused, who's also wondering if they're the only one. You're helping them see, no, I'm not alone. Other people understand this. Other people are going through this. And that connection, that understanding, it helps. So if you feel moved to leave a comment, I'd be honored to read it. And if you want more of these meditations, more explorations of what it means to be human, to struggle, to transform, consider subscribing. I create these every week, each one going deep into something real, something difficult, something most people don't talk about, because I believe we need spaces where we can be honest about what we're actually going through, where we don't have to pretend we have it all figured out, where being stuck and confused and struggling is okay, is normal, is part of the journey. So if that resonates with you, I'd love to have you here on this journey. But only if it feels right. No pressure, no obligation, just an invitation. To keep exploring together what it means to be yourself, to be whole, to be human. All right. Now let yourself go completely. Let yourself drift into deeper sleep, into rest, into peace, into the darkness that holds you. You've done beautiful work tonight. You've listened, you've been present, you've been willing to see what you needed to see. That's all you need to do. The rest, the transformation, the getting unstuck, the movement forward, that's happening without your effort. As you sleep, you're unconscious. It's integrating everything, it's reorganizing, it's preparing for what comes next. You don't have to manage it. You don't have to control it. You just have to rest and trust that something is happening beneath the surface. Something good, something real, something that will change everything. In its own time, in its own way. Rest now. Let go of trying to figure it out, trying to force it, trying to make it happen. Just breathe. Slowly, deeply. Let each breath release a little more of the tension, the trying, the need to know. Just breathing, just being, just here. In this moment, in this darkness, in this stillness, you are safe here. You are held. You are exactly where you need to be. And being stuck, it's not the end of your story. It's just a chapter, a necessary chapter, a chapter that's teaching you something you couldn't have learned any other way. And when this chapter is over, when you've learned what you need to learn, the next chapter will begin. Not because you forced it, but because you were ready. Because you listened, because you understood, because you trusted. The natural movement of your own psyche toward wholeness. And that next chapter, it's going to be more true, more alive, more yours than anything you've known before. But you have to be in this chapter first. You have to be here in the stuckness, in the not knowing, in the darkness, to learn what this chapter has to teach you. So be here fully, completely, with acceptance, with patience, with trust, that this is exactly where you need to be. Right now, breathe. Feel your body releasing, softening, letting go of the need to move, the need to know, the need to be anywhere other than here. Just here, In this moment, in this breath, in this stillness, and as you breathe, as you soften, as you let go, something is shifting, something is changing, something is moving. Not externally, not yet, but internally, in the deep places where real transformation happens. Your psyche is working, dissolving old patterns, integrating new understanding, preparing new pathways. You don't have to see it. You don't have to feel it. You just have to trust it. It's happening right now, as you rest, as you breathe, as you allow the natural movement, the natural healing, the natural transformation that happens when you finally stop fighting and start trusting, when you finally stop forcing and start allowing, when you finally stop trying to be unstuck and start being with the stuckness. That's when everything changes. Not all at once, but slowly, surely, inevitably. Because you've stopped blocking it. You've stopped fighting yourself. You've started finally trusting yourself, trusting your psyche, trusting the process, trusting that you're exactly where you need to be. And that trust, that's the key that unlocks everything. Rest now, deeper, into trust, into peace, into the understanding that you don't have to do anything, don't have to figure anything out, don't have to make anything happen. You just have to be here, now, in this moment, and everything else will unfold in its own perfect time. Let go of the trying, the striving, the forcing. Just let go and rest in the knowing that you're held, you're guided, you're moving, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when you're still stuck. Something is moving beneath the surface, moving you toward wholeness, toward truth, toward yourself. And all you have to do is trust it, allow it, be with it, and it will take you where you need to go. Not where you thought you wanted to go, but where you actually need to be, to become who you actually are. Rest, sleep, deeply, peacefully, completely. You are sati. You are held. You are becoming who you were always meant to be. And being stuck isn't stopping that. It's part of it, a necessary part, a sacred part. The pause, the stillness, the darkness before the next growth. Rest in that, trust that, allow that. And when you wake, you'll be different. Not because the external situation has changed, but because you've stopped fighting yourself. You've started trusting yourself, and that changes everything. Sleep now, deep, restful, transformative sleep, where the psyche does what it knows how to do, where the self guides you toward wholeness, where being stuck becomes the doorway to who you're becoming. Rest, sleep, peace. You are enough. You always were. Even stuck, even confused, even not knowing, you are enough, and you are becoming who you were always meant to be. Sleep,